starts about 5 minutes away till the morning. Some people want to go pick some stuff up. Keep back, yeah. After lunch, we'll go about 40 or 45 minutes, because I know it's tough when you come back and the food selling, so you can change up. Who in here is actually like going back home tonight, whether it's home or the firehouse? Raise your hand, hold it up. All right, just to give you an idea, we'll probably get out about 4 o'clock. I think it said 5 o'clock. But we're coming back tomorrow. It's a long day. Gives you a chance to get home, have dinner with family or whatever you're going to do. Just for planning purposes, we'll probably go somewhere right around 4 o'clock. For anybody who's staying at a hotel from out of town, we're going to the Celt at 368 Broadway, right? West Broadway. 368 West Broadway. Whether you're local or not, we're going to go there. We drink Coke, water. I'm probably going to have a kind of Guinness, and just talk stuff, fire service, shop, that sort of thing. So raise your hand if you might. You don't have to be committed. Raise your hand if you might come there, so we kind of have an idea how big it's going to be. Where? You got two saying no, so maybe he knows the owner. He's trying to get some revenue with him. All right, 368 West Broadway. And then tomorrow, we'll start at 8:30. 8:30 tomorrow here. Most of the time, most places I go, we do 9 to 8 to 5, just a long day sitting in a chair, and then you'll lose what I call the keynote effect. Does that make sense? The high energy, it just gets drug out. So we'll get done about 4 today, and we'll start tomorrow at 8:30.
Don't set your clocks.
All right, everybody good? Everybody get enough to eat? Awesome. We'll go about 45 minutes and take a break, rock and roll. So I stopped wearing diapers. I'll never forget, early on after I went to Scandia County, I was a captain in the training division, and we had a lieutenant that was pretty senior. He worked for EMS, got transferred over to fire. Scandia County became a county-wide fire department, and he did something that he shouldn't have done, got called down to headquarters. I was sitting in there with the fire chief and deputy chief. I can't remember if he was getting a day off without pay. It was definitely a written reprimand. And they were sitting in the office, and they were going over what he'd done wrong, yada, yada. And the lieutenant looks at the deputy chief, and he says to him, well, you used to do the same thing. And the deputy chief looked at him and said, yeah, I used to shit green and wear diapers, but I don't do that anymore. And you know, the reality of leadership lesson is a lot of times in the fire service, a lot of things that we don't necessarily do right as a young firefighter or officer. Maybe we don't put our gear on. Maybe, you know, we don't wear our mask or whatever. And there is a point where you can't use that as an excuse anymore when you become an officer. It's going to be tougher for you if you didn't do things right as a firefighter or right as a driver, right as an officer, whatever rank it is, because everybody under you is going to see that now you're trying to hold them accountable and do what's right. And you got to start somewhere. Someday, you got to start. Whenever I do a company officer class and I talk about setting expectations with your company, doing a daily roll call sheet, who in here does a daily roll call sheet? Where you literally have a sheet, and when you come to the firehouse at breakfast time, you sit at the kitchen table, and it's a standard form. You put in the weather, the wind direction, how cold it's going to be, how hot it's going to be. You cover what drill you're going to do for the day. We have any PR events. You go over anything that's happened in the last 96 hours that you've been on for you people that are spoiled. For us, it's whatever's happened in the last 48 hours. And just any type of emails are printed off. And so I'll be going over that. A lot of times in a classroom, you know, somebody that does not do it, they'll come up to me and like, hey, Curt, you know, I've been a captain for 6 years. How am I supposed to go back? And after 6 years, my driver's been my driver for 4 years. How do I come back from this conference? And then the first shift back, all of a sudden, like, I'm sitting down with a formal sheet, and at the breakfast table, I'm doing a roll call. So you do it just like it was day one of being a captain. Just because you've been a captain for 6 years and haven't been doing it does not make it okay to continue. You now know that it's the right thing to do, and you're more feared of your crew thinking you're goofy than being a right and just being a boss and doing the right thing. And that's the same thing with anything that we do, is we gotta sometimes just be a little more humble and realize that, hey, we're always in ongoing battle of learning. Yeah, we used to wear diapers. We used to do things. And in this picture, that's actually me on the top left with a yellow helmet wearing a jumpsuit. That's a junior firefighter backing me up. And then the firefighter full gear, breathing air is the firefighter that just got out of, firefighter one in the state of Florida. So the only person senior to me is Chief King Gabriel, the guy on the far right with the pull-up boots. Retired in 1979 with 40 years in the city of Detroit. As a kid, he used to tell me stories, and I just thought it was an old man telling stories, about like fire out 10 windows on the 7th floor of an occupied, high-rise apartment building. They pulled out 22 people, and like he told me all these stories as a kid. I'd be in a firehouse. He's my dad's deputy chief. And when I was a little kid, it sounded just crazy, then being from suburban America. And when I got older, what did I realize about his stories? They were all true. And he used to tell me, we had, one night I'll never forget, we went from one fire to the next, we never went back to the firehouse. I thought he was exaggerating. And the reality is he was going from one fire to the next. And so he was a huge mentor to me. And so Chief King Gabriel standing there over this is a burn-up mobile home that literally was out in the middle of nowhere by the time they called, what was it, on the ground. But he's standing there, and that's all he knows. That's all he knows. And all I know is what I've done, is what? Grow up watching him. And then the smartest person in this picture, who's the smartest person in this picture? The new guy in full bunker gear, right? And so there's a point, I tell you that because, you know what, as a young firefighter, junior firefighter, I went to a lot of fires where I weighted the mask up, I took my mask off early during overhaul, and I look back now and I think about laying in my bed, whether it's at the firehouse or being a volunteer laying in bed back at home, and swallowing and having this weird feeling in my throat. And at the time, I thought it was cool. What I think I'd done? I took in some smoke, right? And, it just, one day, and it's been, 20 years, one day I woke up and I said, I'm done, man. Air's free. My dad told me it's free. And so as a chief, am I making people go on air sooner and staying on longer? Guaranteed. And it's really just to prolong their life at the end of the day, because I guess I might know eventually, but I don't know what this fire and so many others, look at the bucket there, that bucket of crap, aerosol cans, there's tar burning, and just a little bit of everything. And that was normal practice. All the way up, really until, 9/11, just using that for a scamp of time, it's sad to use 9/11 as like pre-9/11, post-9/11. But up to 9/11, it was pretty standard. People just didn't wear a mask a lot of times for car fires and dumpsters. And there's a reason why your bosses and the leadership want you to do it. And, and cancer's not the only reason. There's a million reasons why we should do it. And there's a point where one day we just got to say, hey, you know what? We're not wearing diapers anymore. Let's wear air. Let's wear our gear. Let's mask up. Chief Gabriel there's got his 3/4 boots on because that's what he knows. But we know now that 3/4 boots don't provide us what bunker pants provide us. There's days, I remember when we got hoods. I'll never forget being downstairs in the apparatus bay at Spring Street when they brought us the $15 white Nomex generic hood, and we had to sign for. We used to have to sign for our pillow and our sheets. And he had a whole sheet and a folder. That was on a computer. And we literally signed, and at the top it said flash hood. That's what they called it. And we rarely tell younger folks now that our Nomex hood is really a flash hood. That's what it's for. It's not about going deeper. It's about, if you're in there and you miscalculate that black light as a flash hood, when it flashes, it's supposed to provide you seconds, not minutes, to get out a window, to get out a door, to open the nozzle, to flow water. So I tell you that as just another nugget when you go back to the firehouse at the kitchen table, when you're talking to your company, your personnel, and you don't have to be an officer, you just be talking to a firefighter that's junior to you, that a Nomex hood is not to go deeper, farther, stay in longer. It's a miscalculation hood. That's what I really wish we call it. It's a flash hood. It's a miscalculation. When we miscalculate something, does it allow us sometimes to go a little farther? Yes. But that's what it's really about, is a flash hood or miscalculation. And earlier I was telling the story where I left the radio on the table. This was Sam Chief Baker. As you can see, he's a pretty good-sized guy. I'm 6'4" in a pair of shoes, and he's taller than me. So he definitely had the stature, he had the formal education, he had the fireground experience. And, he's the guy that taught me that at the end of the day, when you're in the fourth quarter, it's less than 2 minutes, you want a Saban or a Sweeney, or you want Coach Chief Baker out, side. The only person or people that say experience doesn't matter are the ones that don't have it. Remember that. The only people that tell you experience doesn't matter is the one that doesn't have it. Anybody that's going to make excuses, it's a self-defensive mechanism. You can't argue in this job about experience. And, I still hopefully have another, 10 or 15 years. Even after I retire, I'm going to probably go to work for another fire department. And I hope that in 10 years, I'm a better fireground commander, I'm a better fire tactician, and I know a lot more from the fires that I'm going to go to over the next 10 or 15 years. I think about some of the first fires I commanded when I got promoted in 2004 to battalion chief, and I'm like, damn, how did I do it? You know what I mean? And in 2008, I thought that. In 2012, I thought that. And now it's 2019, and I'm like, sometimes, how did I do it 5 years ago? Back in June, I had what most places would probably be like a fifth alarm fire. 26 three-story wood frame condominiums going. We looked into 5 hydrants, fully capped. So 5 hydrants, 3/4 of hydrants, 15 supply lines, and 2 fireboats operating in a coastal waterway, and I was the operations chief for 8 years. When that fire was over, 8 hours, I was the ops chief, moving around the fire ground. Full established command post, 3 SUVs, side by side, 3 EOP. And when the fire was out, I was like, I would not have wanted to do that 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 15 years ago. I mean, when I did that in June, I basically had 15 years as a battalion chief to be walking around with 26 three-story wood frame buildings, private dwelling exposure burning, and then another 2-story quadplex on fire with a 20-mile-an-hour wind. And it was 19 or 15 years building up to that fire for what? For comments when I'm walking around saying, you know what? That building's not even on fire, we're going to write it off. 10 years ago, what would I maybe thought we could have done? Stopped it. But if I thought that building would have burned, it would have been the next 2 buildings would have burned, because we would never got ahead of it enough to get our supply operation going in there. So experience matters. Remember that you're always going to be getting that experience all the way to the last day, whether it's reading something, going to a fire, and just learning the values of those things. When you're on the fire ground, whether you're a driver, even a senior firefighter, chief, captain, make a decision and give an order. And I like this picture, and I picked it on purpose because everybody always says, I don't point at anybody because there's 4 fingers pointing back at you. There's a time and a place on a fire ground to be direct and give an order. I mean, be strong, stern, and what you want. This is not a democracy at 2 o'clock in the morning when people's lives are in danger and stuff's on fire. It's not a time, should we be open to people's input? Yes, but sometimes it's a direct order. I want you and you to get a 24 to the back of the building as of yesterday. I want you and you to get a line to the 3rd floor. And you want it now. We already needed it done. We need it done now, get it done. And a lot of times we need direct radio communication. I don't care if you use blue card, red card, green cards. I don't care if you went to the National Fire Academy Command and Control class 5 times. All of that stuff's great, but there's nothing better than you and I looking eye to eye communicate sometimes. I need you to get the backup building open as soon as possible. And you're looking at me and you're like, oh shit, I mean, if you know it's real, it's not just Main Street Command, truck 1. You're going to be established as the forcible entry sector of the Charlie side entry point open. And you might be like this, but if I say, what's your name? Hey Scott, I need the backup building open now. You're probably going to be like this, you know what I mean, type of thing. And those are things that we have to understand. And I challenge you to go to CF Tactics and look at that article that I shared yesterday or 2 days ago on the 4 generations of command, because you're going to see the fire service do a whole loop around. Do we need, for lack of a better term, National Fire Academy Command and Control? Yes. Do we need it for wildland fires? Yes. When it's a 1-story, a 2-story private dwelling, or an apartment on fire, and a 2-story garden apartment, what we need is action, and action is tactics, and we need it done now. And a lot of times, it's good controlled, sound terminology, great, yes. But in the day, so engine 1, attack 9, get water on the fire, truck 1, open the building, do a search, rescue 1, search the floor above. Plain and simple, you know what I mean? Just plain English on what we want and get it done. I call that tactical command. I wish, before my career is over, the West Coast and the East Coast could come together. What kind of command does the West Coast use? In general terms, stereotyping. It's strategic command. Everything West Coast terminology from somebody that travels the country, West Coast thinks in a strategic. Everything is like wildland, like LA's on fire like it is now, right? Like we need porta potties and we need tenders and tankers and whatever the difference is between those two, I get confused. But we need something to drop water from the sky and we need something to bring water on the ground, right? And they're like, I mean, big complex, which is important. And then on the East Coast, what you West Coasters think on the East Coast is the fire chief, the deputy chief, and 5 battalion chiefs are on the fire floor in the building, literally searching and flowing water. That's what the West Coast thinks the East Coast does. Is there some truth to that? But in reality, if you go back for 5, 6 decades, where's the chief in charge of any fire in New York City always been? Out front of the street, not the building. And they got a huge command board that's existed 50 years. They were light years ahead of most of the entire country with their command board. It opens up and the magnets are tracking everything. 40 years ago, they had like basically a motorcycle battery running a mobile radio at a command post in the street where they could see the building. They were way ahead. Well, we were so insecure that they were leaders in the fire service with their radios on straps and all that other stuff that we acted like that they didn't operate that way. They've always operated. They just were able to have 4 or 5 chiefs standing in the street at a big fancy command center, and then have a chief on the fire floor, a chief on the floor above, a chief below. Is that the way to do it? Guaranteed it is. We're just jealous because we don't have that many chiefs to be in charge of 200 firefighters. So what we really need is we need strategic command from the West Coast, and we need tactical command from the East Coast. And we need to understand to adapt in a situation. Well, most of the time you'll find a fire department that every incident they go to, their organization buys into tactical command 100% of the time. And what I mean by that is if you're from the East Coast and you're a chief and you pull up and you got a Cessna into the 3rd floor of a 4-story wood frame apartment building, the chief's up on the 3rd floor. That's not a good thing, right? But it's also not a good thing when you're on the West Coast and a battalion chief shows up first to a 2-story private dwelling, and there's a little bit of smoke just kind of rolling out the front door, and the chief pulls past, looks at 3 sides, rounds around the block to look at the back of the house from a street over, then backs in the driveway, looks through their windshield, battalion 1 to fire alarm, on scene of a 2,213 square foot wood frame private dwelling built in 2014. It's got brick on the Alpha side, vinyl on the Bravo side. Charlie side is not visible at this time. Appears we possibly have a working fire, unknown based on the density and approximate capacity of the smoke venting to the Alpha entry point. I will be establishing Main Street Command. My engine 1 on arrival will be the attack sector, with the driver as the accountability officer. Engine 2 will need to provide a forward delay. Is there some truth to what I just said? I said I wasn't going to use the F word again. I'm not going to. Yeah, I'm not. And the kitchen fire, it's still a kitchen fire. Mrs. Smith is unconscious on the kitchen floor right now. Mrs. Smith's unconscious. And the first 2 incidents, 3 minutes or 4 minutes away because they were on a medical room or clearing a medical call. And the chief's looking through the windshield, using all of it. Sounds great when you're bumping that fire from 3,000 miles away, by the way. It's very cool to listen to, like on the radioreference.com or whatever. Well, what would that same chief, if they were off duty and they were at home at their house, and somebody came banging on the door and said, "Hey, Mrs. Smith's house on fire across the street," and the same amount of smoke, no, we'll even go a step closer, more smoke was rolling out the top of the door, what would that chief off duty right now immediately do? Run across the street, run inside, see Mrs. Smith, drag her out, and if it was a civilian, we would give them praise and awards for the heroic civilian. But the American Fire Service would go berserk about this chief who off duty went into an IDLH environment and risked their lives. And then the IFF and our local be worried because now we'll be attacked in our a cancer policy because they subjected themselves to particulates of something while not operating under the workman's comp. You know all this stuff I'm saying there's truth to it. It's sad. So I'm going to tell you what my good mentor friend, Mike Lombardo, retired commissioner from Buffalo, told me. He said, "Curt, chief officers are more scared of the fire department than they are of the fire." And when he teaches the class, sometimes he'll say to a chief, are you scared of the fire department or are you scared of the fire? See, the chief that pulled up back and across the street and looked at the windshield, they're scared of the fire department. They're scared of the deputy chief and the fire chief that if they were to use common sense of that fire, park across the street with a rear hatchback of an $80,000 SUV that never gets properly used. If they got out of it, right over the front door, so shit, it's just the kitchen cabinets, and they did a look-see, the chief would write them up for what? Not establishing blue card command in a stationary position at approximately so many feet away from the building that could possibly self-implode. But when they're off duty, they're not scared of the fire chief because they're off duty in their own time, and they know the best thing to do to save civilian lives is to bang on doors and holler and scream and make sure to see if anybody's inside. Did I explain the 2 points of strategic tactical? You know, so what I have tried to practice, and I'm not there, I'm trying to do the best, is if I pull up on a fire and I'm first on scene, and I think it's well within a first alarm assignment, like I know it's going to be held to the box, it's not going to be anything, a kitchen fire, and I'm first on scene. I'm going to park my car, my vehicle, to where it can be utilized if this thing goes beyond what I expect it to. It becomes fully involved, there's a collapse, there's a mayday. I want my vehicle to be in a position, it would be an ideal command post, and hopefully after all the rigs got there, that I can still possibly see the building from the stationary command post with the radios and all that other stuff. And I would get out, I'd do a 360, I'd look inside, I'd put on the radio, and I'd give a report exactly what I saw. Now when the first new company gets there, could they possibly not have to do a 360 because I already did it, they could just go straight in the front door for an attack? Because I confirmed that there's no walkout rear, it's not on a hill, there's not a swimming pool, there's not a tank at the back door looking through the front door ready to shoot them because it's a terrorist incident or whatever. Because we become so scared of the minority, the small calls, that we can't operate and function on 95% of our other calls, right? But then again, and I've had a few just this year, I pull up, and maybe an engine company's on scene, or maybe not, but I'm just going to make something up. It's an airplane in the second floor of a 3-story guard apartment. Get down and doing something's not going to do anything. Battalion 2 Escambia, on scene, small aircraft in the second floor of an occupied 3-story guard apartment, establishing Fairfield Command, transmit a second, a third alarm. Have all in responding units stay on the Escambia main. Once on scene, they can report an attack 3. Right? The Escambia, on top of that second, third alarm, send me a 211 for transport, so I get more ambulances coming. And I'm going to start doing what? I'm going to start strategically setting up for the big call. And that's what we need to do. And I tell a lot of you, because a lot of you are not chiefs yet, but you're going to be chiefs. Or you're going to be that company officer that's going to be first to ride in the right seat of an engine. It's not happened very many times, but it has happened where I pulled up and literally on scene of a mansion that's 25-30% involved. I literally caught a hydrant laying in and never got out of the rig until the first chief got there. I'm literally just lining up for where tower liners need to go, the exposures or mansions, because I knew when I got out with a 3 or 4 person engine company, the amount of fire was beyond our fire flow capabilities of our staff. Even a deck gun, 1,000 gallons a minute, that 1,000 wouldn't do anything based on where I would actually be able to apply. So what am I doing? I'm setting up for wherever anybody needs to come. And after, when I was in Pensacola, it was called fire alarm. Engine 2 fire alarm, on scene of a large 8,000 plus square foot mansion, heavy fire on the second floor, transmit a second alarm. Engine 2 will be established at a command post, add engine 2 until arrival of battalion 1. You know, boom. Engine 2, on scene, operating the deck on an exposure D, Delta. Engine 2 to engine 1, on arrival, I need you to drop your crew and reverse out to pump the hydrant. Great. Command to ladder 16 on arrival, I need you to hold short so you can leave a place for ladder 11, who's a stick, an aerial device, and operate the aerial device on the downwind exposure. And so now, as a first new company officer, I'm telling all the rigs what to do before they get there. And since all the other rigs are riding in the cab, hopefully what are all the rigs doing? Listen to what everybody else is going to do. When they get there, now 3, 4 engines, 2 trucks are resting. You know exactly what I'm painting because the battalion chief was on the north side of the city having lunch at another firehouse. And then when the chief gets there, and he comes up to me and says, hey, Ike, I got it. Copy that, chief. What do you want me to do? I want you to be my eyes and my rear. All this good. I got to build now a rear, even as a first new company officer, because this was not a fast attack, 1 or 2 room fire in a private dwelling. It was a newer style mansion with so much fire that not even 2 engine companies are going to do it. It's beyond that booster backup concept, if you will. So understanding tactical command. Who in here is allowed to do vertical ventilation? Your organization, if need be, you're allowed to raise your hand and hold it up. Who in here you cannot? It's in an SOG, you cannot get on the roof. Anybody? There's nobody in here that you can't not do it. You'd be surprised around the country. There's departments that's in writing, you shall not get on a roof. How many firefighters have died from vertical ventilation wearing full gear on a residential structure? Full bunker gear, hoods up, flaps down, vertical ventilation on a private dwelling. How many firefighters have died? 0. Now last night in Toronto, 2 firefighters fell off the roof of a building. I don't know if it was residential or commercial. They thought there was a ledge and they stepped off. So things like that happen. People slipped on the roof. And I tell you that not because it's going to happen tomorrow. Who knows about Captain Pete Durn, President of California? March was, I guess, 3 years ago, 4 years ago now. Probably one of the most viewed videos in the last 10 years was on Good Morning America, ABC News. It was horrific. He's walking across the roof and he fell into an inferno. Did he die? No. What's the only part of his body that got burned? Where he wasn't wearing fire gloves and where he didn't have his hood on. His flaps and his helmet were rolled up, he wasn't wearing a hood. Not knocking Captain Pete Durn, 8 up into the job, great firefighter. But I had the fortunate opportunity, my wife and I sat on the front row in San Diego a year after that fire and listened to Chief Donnis. Unbelievable fire chief. She was as transparent, as open and honest as she could be. She took all the weight on her shoulders and said, Captain Pete Durn falling through that roof was 100% my responsibility as a chief, and not understanding there was a time to change the culture in our organization. And she went on at Firehouse Expo, a nationally recognized conference, to tell that they didn't ensure or make sure their firefighters wore hoods, not for that fire, but what? For every fire, as an accountability thing. They allowed them to have their hoods. It was a culture. That a lot of times the radios would just be up on the dash. They were full 100% tactically deployed. There was no even thought of strategic management. And long story, you ever get a chance to listen to her also? She talks about being outcasted by the union, and the union didn't want her at the hospital, but she was chief that stepped up to the occasion. She went to the hospital every single day. And she admitted, she said when she left, she'd get in the car and she'd just break down crying. But every day she'd go there and she'd be there, and when it was all said and done, she survived the Captain Pete Durn incident and become very supported by the organization, and she's been able to change their culture to a more, not, still aggressive, proactive. The Valley there, right next to Stockton, and that sort of thing is aggressive, but they were kind of like the super sofa store fire. Up until that, had they been getting away with that aggressiveness and not wearing hoods and just different things? Yeah, there's a change. I tell you that story because a week before Captain Pete Durn fell through that roof, I posted an article in County Fire Tactics about vertical ventilation and fear mongering, and nobody's ever died. It was about the worst time of anything I've ever posted. I mean, I posted, it might have been 2 or 3 days. I posted it, and I get up in the morning, and there's a video of Good Morning America of a brother firefighter in California falling into an inferno. He's in a burn unit, they don't know if he's going to survive, and he's on a residential structure. So I tell you that because I still ask the question. He survived, he did 6 months in a burn unit, and somebody could die today or tomorrow doing vertical ventilation at a house. So I'm not here to tell you it's safe. What I'm here to tell you is the numbers don't add up with it being any more dangerous than being on an house and going through the front door of that big black cotton candy blowing out the front. And it could happen, but I, as an incident commander, as a battalion chief, whether it be a chief in charge as a tactical chief or a strategic chief, my pucker factor is way worse when I have a rocket house fire and somebody's inside on the nozzle. When I see them on the roof, I'm like, all right, no big deal, because I can see them. And I know that if they're on the roof, and I'm in command, if they're on the roof, what does that mean I have below them? I have a line somebody's operating. I'm not putting anybody on the roof unless the line can be in a building. Because if I'm going to vertically cut a hole in the roof, that means it's a coordinated fire attack. And I'm going to cut a hole and I'm going to allow it to create a vertical chimney, and I'm going to give it oxygen. As soon as I let the heat out, it's going to produce more heat unless I do what? Unless I manage the heat that I'm releasing through water application, which is somebody hooking a ceiling and putting water from underneath, if you will. So I have slides, and I probably should have come up tomorrow, but a lot of times when somebody's operating on a roof and a crews inside, the crews inside are in more harm's way than the one on the roof. If there's a collapse and people inside, what are they going to be in relation to the collapse? They're going to be underneath it. The person on the roof of the flats, where are they going to be? They're going to be a surface. Does that make sense? They're not going to be trapped, if you will. If it's lightweight, I'm not advocating lightweight truss construction vertical ventilation, but if they're operating on a lightweight truss roof of new construction with a sheetrock ceiling and they fall through, what's a 250-pound firefighter full bunker gear? Where are they going to end up? Inside where the hose line is. They're going to bust right through the bottom floor, the sheetrock, all the way through. They're not advocating that. What I'm trying to do is open your eyes to sometimes what we think is dangerous is really safe for the things you think are safe. Am I getting my message through to you? That when a hose line's going through a front door of a private building, they're more likely to get injured and killed than somebody cutting a roof. But I will tell you this. And if you like reading reports, very good report on vertical ventilation and a close call study is the Modesto report. Modesto, California. Now, for the 5 or 6 of you that are going to pull that up and read, when you read the Modesto report, I want you to listen. When you go and you Google Modesto, California Fire Department, you pull up the Modesto report, it's where they were operating a private dwelling, and they're up on a roof, and it was an unprotected garage ceiling, so the fire instantly is attacking what? Structural members. They fell through. Lucky for the 3 firefighters, I think it was 3, definitely 2. 2 got burned and were off the job. When they fell through the roof of that working fire, they survived. It is 3 months before the entire department had gone through a RIT drill operation, a rapidly stretching lines, put water on a fire, and conducted a RIT. So they were able to get in there, get them out. That's what saved it. When you read that report, the Modesto report, who's going to pull up the Modesto report and read? Let's see what challenge. Let's build up expectations. When you pull up the Modesto report, you read it. I read it. And when I got done reading it, immediately I sent out an email to my battalion that I got the whole department to come up with it. When I read the Modesto report, I said, 100%, anytime we send personnel to the roof for vertical ventilation at a working fire, you shall be wearing structural fire gloves, hood up, flaps down. Everybody know what I mean by flaps when you pull the flaps down? See, in Florida, it's not uncommon for people to cut those out or roll them out because it's so hot in the heat. Hood up, flaps down, collar up, fully bunkered up. And before that, it was discretionary. Sometimes we cut a roof. You had your pack on because you didn't mask up. The Modesto report came out. Structural gloves, hood up, flaps down, all that for me to read the Modesto report. Anybody familiar with the geography of where Fresno, California is in relation to Modesto? How close is it over? 20 minutes? It ain't far, man. It's right down the street. It's like Modesto and Fresno and Stockton and all this, right there. And Modesto, after that incident, ran a symposium every year. They brought me in a few years later, and I went and taught at the Modesto Firefighter Symposium. Where I'm going with this is, guess who never read that report? The people in Fresno, California, 20 minutes up the road, because it didn't happen to us. I'm here to teach you, so I'm not disrespecting them. But it happened to them, right? It happened to what's that place down in the south, maybe Blackfoot, you know what I mean? Or it'd be like Boise saying, it happened in Idaho Falls, that's not going to happen here in Boise. If they would have read the report, the Modesto report, what happened 20 minutes away and implemented that in their department, their organization, Pete Durham could have still been on the roof. Pete Durham would have still fell into the fire, but what would Pete Durham possibly have been wearing? Structural fire gloves and a hood with flaps down. And I think if we could bring Pete Durham here that loves the job, he would tell you, you know what, if I could go back to my wife, my kids, my family, myself, I'd have a hood on that day. I'd have my flaps down. I'd have structural fire gloves on. And so that's the problem is too many times we don't want to take the time to learn lessons from other people's close mishaps. And we have to do that. You can't say, oh, it'll never happen here. We have to study those close calls, those line of duty deaths. And we have to implement operational, cultural change from somebody else's close call. And I even think so more so than a line of duty death. You know what I mean? Definitely a line of duty death. But we have to study those, and not just read them, but then we have to implement them. We have to put them like gold. We got to put them in a firehouse. We got to talk about, what happened, what went right, what went wrong. Before I show you the video of vertical ventilation here, this is a fire that's me on the left side of the picture there. It's hard to tell, but there's an add-on to the right, there's an add-on to the left top of the screen of my shoulder, back add-on. This is like just a very rough bar, for lack of a better term, a dive bar, some people might call it, a place that I wouldn't want to hang out. wooden plywooded ceilings instead of sheetrock, and had a fire in the back of the building. The lights are on, but it's kind of hard to tell. Pretty good smoke all the way across. And we're unknown if we have some drunks in the back based on the board. It was not late at night. It was probably 7:30 or 8 o'clock. Nobody could really tell us if everybody got out. I'm telling you that based on why we were aggressive. And I'm doing a tactical command. I was first on scene. And I got an engine company going through the front door. Engine 16's pushing in. And engine 16's pushing in flowing water. I mean, like they're pushing in. And they push in to the left. They go probably, I don't know, probably 10, 15 feet. And I'm standing out front. And this is where, based on my experiences, why, whether it's the incident commander or an operations chief or whatever you want to call it, I want somebody, whether it be myself or somebody that I value their experience and their trust, that's not operationally, physically, tactically engaged reading the building. And this is one of a bunch, but I just chose this one. I'm standing out front, and I'm watching those sockets all the way across the entire screen. This picture doesn't do great justice. You're looking below that A on the tactics, and everybody see that smoke, and it's nasty that it looks in that picture. And I'm standing out front, and if a hose line makes entry, and you know it's a company that's flowing water, you can tell the line's bouncing. That means they're opening and closing, they're opening and closing. And I know they're flowing water, and standing out front, I visually see the smoke pushing through boxed-in wood frame sockets is chugging worse. The smoke's getting thicker, more dense, and the cotton candy is looking pretty impressive. Is that a problem? It happened in a matter of seconds, 20 seconds or less. If I was in my chief's buggy a block away or I couldn't see the building, could all the company officers and people that are operationally involved that are in the fight and fire, could they possibly miss that? Guaranteed. I visually saw it. I got on the radio. Command engine 16. No answer. Command engine 16. No answer. Command to engine 11. Backup line pushing into the front door. I wanted them getting in there. I was worried about something happening, so I want that line falling over them. I called 16 3 times. They don't answer. I get on the radio and I say, Captain to Lieutenant James Shaw. He was a lieutenant on 16. What do I immediately get? He answered. Why did he not answer 3 times when I said engine 16? He hadn't been called engine 16 for 41 years. He's been called James Shaw for 41 years. He's highly engaged. He's doing stuff. And at this point, I can't remember if he's on or not. He might just be on overtime for a day. He normally works on ladder 12 or whatever. And I tell you this because there are programs, and I'm here to kind of tell you things maybe not heard before. There are places or programs that will tell you, I never called somebody by their name, or that's unprofessional, whatever. Was it unprofessional if the 4th time I called him by his name and he answered me, and I said, I need you to back out, and he backed out? That was the right thing to do, right, at the end of the day. And I learned that too from Michael Ward. He said, sometimes in the heat of battle, you got to call somebody by the name, get on the radio and say, hey, Johnny, it's getting bad, let's get out of here. You know what I mean? Command to ladder 11, Alpha Bravo, radio call sign. We're going to prepare for a retreat in about 32 seconds. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes stuff just gets to be too complex where you just need some simple terminology. You know what I mean? Like, what's your name? Scott? I get on the radio and I say, hey, Commander Scott, man, the second floor is about to light up. Get out of there. If you're on the second floor, you're probably jumping out a window, right? What company are you on? Engine 2. Command to Engine 2, Division 2, Attack Sector. Is that possible some places call it that? Command to Engine 2, Division 2, Attack Sector. And by the time I'm done doing that long dissertation, you call me on the radio. This is Engine 2, Division 2, Attack Sector. Go ahead, Chief. Or you might have to call me like Main Street West Command or whatever. Engine 2, Division 2, Attack Sector. Second floor smoke is rapidly increasing, approximately something. I'm going to need you to evacuate the second floor. By then, the second floor have already lit off. And so he's going to radio and say, Scott, get the hell off the second floor. The place is coming down. Right? And I tell you that being a guy that grew up in Northwest Florida, home of the Blue Angels, home of ASOC, Air Force Special Operations Command. I'd say this this morning, but my mom worked at ASOC. That was until she retired. Almost 40 years working civil service for the Air Force, so she's the highest ranking clearance that a civil service person could get based on they knew where she'd been. My dad was in the Air Force, and so she worked in the general's office at ASOC, which is kind of like the SEALs for the Air Force. That's their home base is Hurlburt, right by my house. And so I grew up, I went to preschool at Hurlburt Air Force Base and Eglin Air Force Base. And everything around me is military, man. There's helicopters everywhere. Military gets 10 to 20% off at every restaurant, everything. We're the biggest, most friendly military town. So I'm pro-military type of person. And so I read military books, I study the military. Anytime they release something like getting Osama, piece of shit, Bin Laden, you know what I mean? I read the reports, the men in the mission, all that. And when you study what military does, you wonder why we, the fire service, sometimes don't do it, right? Just plain and simple, plain English when we're in combat, like when we went and got that dirt bag recently, you know what I mean, and the dog tracked me down. Sometimes we just got to keep things simple, stupid. Kids, keep it simple, stupid. It really is that easy. And it comes down to tactical command. But when we get that bigger one, we have to know how to step back and be in the vehicle. The open and slide, I didn't point it out, but at that restaurant fire, it happened to be at the back of the chief's buggy. I didn't have my gear on. I'm like a pro gear person. And that's because I was the second arriving chief. He asked me to be the incident commander, and he took an ops position. So this next video is about 5 minutes long, but I want to play it, and I want you to look close, and you're going to be able to see when they as they're cutting the hole, you will see water come through the kerf cut as they're cutting the hole. The K-12's running, and Sean King's running the K-12. Now, when they go, this is a one-story range. Some people laugh at it. If we can put an aerial device on a one-story, we will. Because if somebody steps through a hole, and they're halfway through a hole, if another firefighter goes over there and steps on the same decking, they're going to probably go through, right? But if I have an aerial device, could somebody be the tip of the aerial device in a position where they can grab a brother or sister firefighter and literally almost use the aerial device as a crane, guaranteed? So an aerial device, when possible, even on a one-story, provides cultural safety, tactical safety, if you will, on operating on that roof in itself. So I'll just play this video and we'll just kind of talk about it. But I want you to watch and see that when they go to the roof, there's already 2 hose lines inside operating. And you'll see me throw up 2 ladders. I walk up and I throw 2 ladders. I'm going to put a ladder to the left where they're cutting and a ladder to the right where they're cutting. There's 2 ladders that be safer than one. When they're cutting, if they were to slip and fall, they can jump across the hole and land on what I like to call snowshoes. It disperses the square pounds per square inch. So one's going to be safer than 2. They're going to have 2 ladders up there. The aerial device is there. If anything's wrong, they're not having to get back and down the ladder. They're literally just stepping on an aerial device, which is independent of the roof itself. We actually train on cutting peak roofs from a straight stick. Saw instantly cranks. When they were going up the ladder, they had their hood up, their flaps down, they were breathing air. Wind's blowing about 25 miles an hour. Water just came through, so watch it real close, you see it shoot through. Can you see it? That's me hollering at him. I said, hey, go ahead and make the cut bigger. You're fine. The crews are operating. So now, why does it light off and then go away? Light off and go away. It's right at the cusp of it being enough water and the ventilation being big enough. Because when they first flowed water, it wasn't burning, it was just smoke, and then it got enough oxygen. They're still flowing. And then it's free burning, and you'll watch it go away, and it comes back. It's like, we need just a little bit more water or a little bit more water. We wish we could take the whole roof off, boom, if you release. There it is, it's gone again. Water, look at the water. These guys are literally getting sprayed in the face in their mask with water as they're cutting that hole. The water's coming through. The fire on the, I wish the video showed it, the fire on the far left you can barely see, that's where it's coming out the gable and it's vinyl siding. It's brick, you know how this is, and the gable's vinyl. It's just the vinyl, that's just an exterior hose line that's to put it out. But it goes away, it comes back, it goes away, it comes back. Now this video is probably the best video I have on what I think is a true coordinated fire attack, where you were literally putting water in the attic space before we gave it what? Oxygen. And inside, the interior crews actually asked about vertical ventilation. Now, I've been to a lot of fires where your initial things, like I'm letting it continue to play because about a minute ago, it looked like what, the fire was out, right? What do you notice it starts doing again? It starts going, they got two lines inside, so the initial fire they get going, but the entire attic, the guy was a retired 20-some year sailor in the Navy. The house was self-insured, which means whatever we say, he has no insurance. But the draft started getting some other combustibles to light on, so we think we're having success. And right now, we just put a third line inside, and another 2 or 3 firefighters from we do mutual aid with Navy Fire, and they're hooking some more sealants, and it's going that fire you see on the other side of the roof is where the vinyl soft is burning. And so 3 lines are inside, and then another line gets stretched for the exterior combustible siding, and they're just finishing off that last hole. Because when we're done, we're literally going to have to get on the roof to overhaul from the roof. Literally, somebody climbs through a hole and digs stuff out instead of dropping it into the house. They're done. They're coming up with that sound is in cut the roll-up doors. So they cut the garage, 2-car garage on the left, they cut the roll-up doors. When they cut them, stuff's falling out because the garage didn't have cars in it. It had people's stuff like, for example, I get a storage unit, you do this, to shut the roll-up door. That was what was inside. You drove by this house the next day, you couldn't even tell there was a fire there other than there's a hole in the garage door. And there's a hole in the roof if you look closely, and the hole was the size they cut. That was a fire where vertical ventilation was the success story. It was a one where engine 14, engine 16, and truck 34 for Navy Fire were inside. And they said when they were in there, it was smoke to the floor. They used the thermometer to see. They could feel the heat when they were flowing water on the roof. Before they cut the roof, they were flowing water. What kind of water did they feel coming down on them? Boiling hot water. When they cut the hole, they said they could feel a draft and could see the smoke in their face, like sucking. And then all of a sudden they saw the attic light up. And the boss, the company officer, Brian Cairo, was like, it was awesome. He was, what can you tell the firefighters? You know, it was easy. They knew where to put the water down. They started flowing water. And he said, when they thought they had it, so what did the younger firefighter do? He shuts the nozzle down and lights off again. So they open the nozzle. That's what you don't see in the video. And then finally I get on the radio and I say, 14, just blow until I tell you to stop. Because I got tired of it lighting off and stopping. And this is almost a fire behavior video, if you will, of just the right amount of water, just the right amount of ventilation to make sure heat, fuel, and oxygen missing. And then also that sometimes you think you're won the battle, and all of a sudden when you move it, it lights off again. And that's where you want to hold fast, stand your ground, stay masked up. And I'm an advocate that not always, but if you can get an aerial device, even to a one-story ranch, I think it provides cultural safety. If somebody were to fall in the attic, you got a high point. I think when they're coming up the aerial, they can. When you come up a roof, now think about this. I'm gonna let you go to break. If I'm on a ladder, straight ladder, and I'm climbing, where are you sounding when you get on the roof? Where are you sounding when you get on the roof initially? Right where it meets the edge. If any place was going to be strong, would that not be the place? Could it give you a false sense of security? But if I have an aerial device on a one-story ranch that the tip is 4 feet from the edge, where it's truly over where you're going to cut a hole. And now, did you see when he grabs the hook and he does like this? Am I now truly realistically sounding the decking of where I'm actually going to be operating? And now when you step off of Bill's spongy, what can you instantly do? Oh, I'm not getting on that roof. And I tell you this because with CF Tactics and 40,000 followers and traveling and social media, we have a lot of uneducated people that for 30 years they were always told that's goofy, that doesn't make sense. It makes just as much sense that if you do it on a 3-story garden apartment. It's an independent aerial safety. If I have firefighters operating on a garden apartment, not only go on one aerial, I like one that's running horizontal with the edge of the house, especially when it's 3 stories, anything above 2. Because if something goes wrong when they slip, what could that ladder possibly do? Keep them from falling and catching over. I like them operating. So if they're on the roof, I like below them, it's almost like a rail in an air ladder. I'll get it past, I'll swing out the turntable, and I'll run it at about 10 degrees to where it's right there. If anything goes wrong, they have that safety net, if you will. Any questions? All right, take about a 10-minute break, get out, stretch, go outside, do whatever, go to the bathroom, and wake up for lunch.